We're going to bring on Toby Dayton. He's the CEO of Linkup. I've known Toby for 20 years probably in the job board space, and finally got a chance to actually converse with him in real life, so to speak. So, Toby, it's good to see you again, and you're dialing in from Minnesota there. And what's new at Linkup? First, tell everyone what Linkup is, if not everyone knows about the company itself.
Yeah, so I'll just give a little bit of background quickly on Linkup. So we've been in the human capital management space for, as Chris said, about 20 years. Started out under the JobDig brand in multimedia recruitment advertising, combined print, web, radio, and TV, mostly for local markets, and competing against daily newspapers and the web, and then bringing in that full circle of media. We started indexing jobs directly from company websites back in 2003, 2004, when we started to see that employers were increasingly putting their jobs on their company websites. And we had always been really focused on delivering a really top tier user experience to job seekers and employers both. So when we started to see companies put jobs on their website directly, that we started really pivoting towards that as the focus of our business, knowing that those are the highest quality job listings, no duplicates, no expired jobs, no fraud, scams, lead gen, all of the stuff that you see that pollutes typical job boards back in the day, and even still to this day. So that's really where Linkup emerged back then. And so today we've got a global job search engine. We're indexing right now about 4 million jobs every day directly from 60,000 company websites around the world. We're definitely overweight US, but we do index jobs globally. It's updated. Every job is updated daily. So it's always current, no duplicate listings. We don't aggregate from other job boards again. So we've got a really high quality user experience and deliver really high quality candidates because of that user experience to the employers that we work with. So the business is really centered around two parts. We've got really two parts of the business. The first is candidate sourcing. So we work with typically largest, about 5,000 employers in the US. And it's pay-per-click recruitment advertising across the entire economy. We work with companies of all sizes within that sort of top tier, all industries, all geographies. Mostly again in very sort of high employee count businesses, and particularly where there are sort of acute supply demand imbalances. So we work with, again, the biggest sectors would be healthcare, technology, retail, hospitality, government. Those
is Linkup part of the programmatic system? Do you?
Yeah, so we do. It is very much part of. We're very much programmatic today. It's approaching about half of our sponsored job listings are coming in via programmatic feeds. Yeah, very much so.
And you said you started back in 2003. The company started.
Yeah, when the company started in 2001, Linkup was really sort of born in 2003, 2004 when we started indexing jobs.
That's right around when Simply Hired got started, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, we were actually back then, we were the third pay-per-click right behind Indeed and Simply Hired. We were sort of, we didn't launch our JobDig was growing a lot in sort of the 2002 to 2000 until the Great Recession. So Linkup was very much in the behind the scenes, kind of in R&D as we were building out the technology, building out the indexing, the scraping. And we really rolled that site out for all intents and purposes in 2009, right in the sort of teeth of the recession. And our first revenue streams were in 2009, first full year of revenue in 2010.
Yeah.
So that's the sourcing business. And then the other part of our business is we use all of that job data and all of that content, if you will, all the job listings to get really granular, deep understandings of what's going on in labor demand. And then we have built a whole wide range of data solutions around labor demand and the predictive powers of our data, because a job listing is obviously a signal of an intent to create a job. So we've started using our data, for example, to forecast non-farm payrolls. We help companies understand workforce and trends in workforce, skills demand, emerging sort of industries and occupations. We work with a lot of players in and around the whole HR tech space with the content that we have. So it's a whole wide range of data solutions. So that's sort of the two parts of our business.
And do you give that away or do you sell that data?
We do, well, we will give our data away for research purposes. So we do work with a lot of universities and typically a lot of sort of PhD work for people who are doing really interesting stuff around the data. But we will, on the data side, we do generate revenue on a subscription basis for companies that are using the data for, depending on the use case. You know, there's a data subscription fee associated with that.
Yeah. If you just joined, feel free to throw your LinkedIn URLs in the chat there so we can all connect with each other. Toby, what you started after in 2009, after the kind of the first downturn here. What did you learn from that you're kind of applying to this current downturn that we're in?
Well, it's interesting. We learned a lot, and it was, you know, we've been around, you know, now we sort of launched in the middle of sort of the dot-com bubble recession, and then, you know, rode up a huge peak into 07, 08, and then just you know, fell off a cliff in sort of late 08 and into 09, the jobless recovery. And that's really where we started to see the value of our data in terms of predicting and sort of a forward view of recovery and economic signals. We started using our data back then to forecast non-farm payrolls, and we actually saw really high correlations between what we were seeing in labor demand and then future job growth in future periods. And interestingly, we started to see not only sort of at a macro, you know, country level, but we started to see by industry where those early signs were that we were in a recovery mode. So in about 2012-ish, we started to see, and back then it was long haul trucking and transportation that really started to show the early hiring signs. And as the economy sort of started to thaw out and start moving again, you could just see the demand going for long haul transportation. Then you could start to see it in the railroads, and you could just see and feel in our data that the economy was starting to move again. And so we really started, that's when we started to generate a lot of attention from economists and forecasters and people who were really keenly interested in what's going on in the, not only just unemployment in the labor market, but just the economy as a whole nationally. And so that's really was a huge part of sort of the emergence of that data side of our business. It's interesting to see the differences in this time around, because while the drop was unbelievably, you know, just as we all know, just incredibly severe in mid-March and through April, it was just, it made that recession look, you know, like pretty mild in comparison. The entire economy hasn't frozen up the way it did back then, where essentially every single business was locked up and there was just no activity. Here, there have been industries that are hiring like crazy through this, and others that are laying off left and right and pulling down every job opening off their site. And it's this really unique sort of bifurcation of labor demand with, you know, some things that are sort of making headlines and are the usual kinds of things, but others that are just sort of interesting to see sort of where that is. And as we posted on our blog, we started to see some hiring pick up generally in the last couple of weeks, really through starting in about early May and sort of accelerating a little bit as the different states are relaxing their lockdown protocols and social distancing, starting to open up again. We've seen, not surprisingly, that new job listings are starting to pop back up. And then now you get this sort of interesting dynamic on a state by state basis as states are opening up. they may, and we'll see what the correlation is between COVID-19 and some of the infection rates, and states sort of putting back on some of those protocols. And it's a crazy time to be sort of looking at a real-time data set around jobs, to say the least.
Well, I got your blog post here, which I'm going to read to the audience. I want to have a couple other just data points that I've noticed in the last couple of weeks, which I'll tell you guys about first, and we'll talk about your post, Toby. First of all, I saw the CEO of Jazz HR put out just some image on LinkedIn the other day showing a trend of job postings going up among their client base. So that was signal number one I saw. I see Jeremy Roberts over at Hiring Solved pushed out a tweet on May 29th saying, according to at Hiring Solved and at Pass, one of their new job search engine, yesterday, Thursday, May 28th, was the biggest job posting day since March 11th. That's over 2 months. Also, I saw salary.com had a survey out. It says research reveals employers expect to rehire 90% of laid off workers. I'm not sure how solid that is, but hey, I took it as good news overall. And then one of my executive recruiter friends says things are starting to thaw among his client base overall. So, and then I saw your article, Toby. So I'm kind of looking at all this. I'm saying to myself, okay, I think we've hit bottom. It seems safe to say that, but curious to get your thoughts. But let me read what you posted on the Linkup blog. There's a link on the chat, top of the chat, for the audience as well, if you want to go read this. So it says, through May 17th, new job listings on company and employer websites throughout the country had risen 28% since the week ending April 26th, with the largest increase in South Carolina, Louisiana, Florida, Texas, and Rhode Island. That trend continued through Sunday as new job openings rose another 8% in just the past week. Since the end of April, the average number of new job postings posted daily on corporate websites across the entire U.S. economy has increased nearly 40%. So what kind of dent do you think that's made in the job losses, Toby?
Well, that's unfortunately where the picture, you can sort of look at this glass half full and glass half empty. The half full is that hiring is starting to pick up again, but when you compare it to where things, the cliff we fell off in mid-March, it is still it is still down dramatically. I think job listings are down roughly 30% as a whole in total from back from and almost to the day. We can pinpoint almost literally to the day, March 16th.
What are those numbers? Like what was the height, and then where are we now?
So on let me pull up the daily job listings. So so on March 16th, so we track a bunch of different things on a daily basis. And some of the things that we do are, because we're always adding new companies and new jobs, we have this upward bias typically to the data set. So we normalize that. So one of the ways we do that is we track, we built an index called the Linkup 10,000, which basically just sum totals the number of job openings for the 10,000 global employers that have the most job openings on any given day in the US. So again, we're indexing jobs globally. So there's some very, very large, global employers, multinational, non-US companies that are hiring in the States. So we want to make sure we capture that. So that Linkup 10,000 on a daily basis, it peaked in mid-March at about just under 3 million job openings that day. And then now today it's sitting at about 1.8 million. So it is dropped significantly from, from that peak to trough, just a steep decline. And it hit bottom right at the end of April. And it's been basically just riding along the bottom since then. in the middle of, I'm sort of midstream, and we'll be putting out a bunch of data for May tonight and tomorrow, with our forecast for May's jobs report coming out on Friday. So there'll be a whole bunch of updated information on our blog in the next couple of days. But the total job openings have held pretty constant through May at about that 1.8-ish million there. So it really has stabilized. I think, again, we're starting to see some upticks in certain industries in new job growth. But it is still, again, there's still a lot of, by industry sort of up and down. So you could start to see, looking at by industry, one of the NAICS codes we look at is food, basically restaurants and hotels, hospitality, sort of leisure. And there's really this sort of crazy bifurcation, whereas restaurants are starting to open up, people are hiring there, but nobody's traveling yet. So for the most part, there are some little pockets of starting to see that, but airlines, rental cars, and hotels are still in sort of a layoff mode. That's just in the last week starting to pick up a little bit. Marriott's got some activity going on. Some of the big national hotel chains are starting to hire, but it really is, it's in this sort of winners and losers category based on industry and where you are and sort of what's going on at whether you're in a big city or a state, sort of what's happening there in terms of policy and infection rates and sort of where people are from a feeling comfortable to start going out and shopping and eating out and getting back to some semblance of normalcy again.
Yeah.
Can
Got
I
some
ask?
questions from the audience here. Go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, Toby, you talked about there being 1.8 million job openings right now in the USA. And there's like 40 million people or something who have become unemployed as a result of COVID-19. I'm guessing these 1.8 million jobs, I know it's much reduced from normal, but I'm guessing these are all in STEM type professions rather than sort of more mainstream kind of jobs.
So just to be clear too, so on the total job openings that we have on our site on any given day, that's actually closer to about 3 million. So we actually have got there are more jobs. The 1.8 was just that Linkup 10,000. That was the largest 10,000 employers. So the job listings total on the search engine. And again, this is also just organic. So we have about another 1 million jobs that are sponsored that have budget, and we get paid on the click for those. So there are about 4 million jobs total on the site. So of the job listings, and again, there is, exactly your point, Adam, there are some differences between the companies that are sponsoring jobs, those openings, and the organic listings. But it really is the big areas where we're starting to see activity and some sort of sustained hiring going on. Healthcare is starting to come back. STEM jobs, you're right. Anything that is remote, where people can work remote, those has tended to be the new jobs there. We are, the sectors that are starting to unlock are where all the new jobs are coming in. Again, restaurant, healthcare is starting to come back in sort of that non-essential healthcare jobs that are starting to open up as offices, and dentists and sort of general diagnostic centers, sort of non-essential medical services are coming back. Transportation is starting to come back, construction, those kinds of things. One of the things that has been, we sort of knew that this was going to be the case, but we underestimated. We're starting to see as companies are expanding and transitioning to remote work, any job that has the word remote in it is getting it. You to your point, you've got about 30 million unemployed people who are just desperate for work, and if they can do something at home and they're qualified, those jobs are filling just in a matter of minutes. They're just getting just crushed with
You're seeing your apply rates go up a lot?
Say that again.
Are you seeing your apply rates go up a lot because
Yeah,
of it?
they are. The apply rates are just for those kinds of positions. It was a little bit overwhelming when we first started to see that, and we've had to sort of meter that because companies are getting their fills faster and spending their budgets faster than they can handle the applications.
Interesting. Any other questions from the audience for Toby?
Yeah, Chris, I actually had a question for you, which was you said that I think you said something along the lines of 90% of people who have been furloughed are likely to be returning to the jobs that they have temporarily exited.
That was the salary.com survey, which said that 90% of employers expect to rehire.
Right. I'm hearing that it's likely to be around 40% of people will go back to the jobs that they have left. That doesn't necessarily mean that those jobs will not be getting rehired for. So it may be actually there's no that's fine, that could connect. So for example, somebody has left their job at a restaurant, they're unhappy with the way they got treated, so they're going to go and work in a different business or something like that. So I think that there's definitely going to be a different number of the jobs that will get refilled versus the people that will go back to the same jobs that they've left, which means a lot of recruitment.
Yeah. Anybody else have any thoughts on just what they're seeing in the market right now as far as good news, bad news? June, you said something in the chat there. You want to just talk about that a bit?
Yeah, sure. So of course, look, I do see a lot of job ads up there, but I've spoken to a few employers, and majority of them say, "Oh yeah, we have the job ad up, but we are not likely to hire until Q3 or so because we don't really have a lot of budget." So, and a lot of companies, though we've been saying, but a lot of companies are not really clearing their ATS as well. The jobs that was there since January or February are still there. And I think that increases a number in the data for the jobs that are available in the market.
That's a great point. There's a problem with old job postings still being out there. Toby, what do you know about that kind of stuff?
Yeah, that is actually, it's a good point, June, on both of those fronts. That sort of the old job postings, number one, and number two, one of the other metrics that we track is essentially time to fill, and how many days are job postings up before companies take them down. Normally, when a company fills a job, or when they take a job off their corporate career portal, they've done so because they've filled the rec. In an environment like this, it is just as often the case, if not way more the case, that they actually have no intention of filling that. But to your point, they may just leave the jobs up there, and either they're for a bunch of reasons. But one of the metrics is that time to fill, what we call duration, job duration. And it's essentially when a job comes down, how long was it up there? And we can literally look at that across the entire economy. And it's still at a very elevated rate. It's almost 55 days on average, which is, the normal average is closer to about 45 days. So it is up there. So hiring velocity is quite slow. One, I think because, well, obvious reasons. I mean, it's just the hiring is just, for every job that's getting filled really quickly, there are 10 other jobs that are just not getting filled at all because the companies either don't hire, or there's just all kinds of uncertainty around what's going on and when people are going to, start filling those again. So those are all very, very good points.
Yeah.
I take it as an industry, we don't approve of any employer posting adverts for jobs they don't intend to hire for, because that's really very disingenuous unless they're actually explaining, we want to build our pipeline because we might want to hire you in Q3.
Adam,
A couple employers doing that. Go ahead, Derek.
Oh, hey guys. Hey, I just want to jump in here. Adam, that's actually a really good point. I think part of the reason why programmatic costs are still skyrocketing, because candidates right now, when you're getting charged more for clicks, because candidates can't tell from a job posting if it's a real job or not.
Yeah.
Like my company, we hire primarily hourly. So I'm with KinderCare. We have 30,000 hourly workforce here in the States. And so COVID hit us really hard. And so I closed all of our recs. I sent a message out to everybody and said, like, hey, we're not hiring right now. And when we are, we're putting now hiring by our jobs, and we're trying to get a little bit more clear on how we can communicate to the job seeker. But it's costing us more money, and the data is really murky of actually what's really going on out there from a job seeker and a click perspective.
Yeah.
I think I absolutely agree. I did saw exactly the similar thing, Derek, with one of the company. They still had all their job ads, but when you go to their career page, they have written in bold, look, we are not hiring at the moment, but if you wish to apply, we are happy for you to apply for the jobs as well. So,
Yeah, I've seen some companies doing that too. That's
Yeah.
probably the best way to handle it, I guess.
It was interesting. When we started to see, we looked at March, how many companies were out there that removed every single job opening in the first 2 weeks of as the thing started to hit hard in the end of March. We looked at how many companies literally removed every single job posting. There were about 2,000 companies, which in some ways is really high, but in other ways, to all of your points, it could have actually been a lot higher because clearly way more companies had no intention of making a single hire. And so you can look at it both ways. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I felt bad for those seekers on Indeed, especially like in early April, all those jobs still from the beginning of March, they were still on Indeed and they're still applying for them, but none of those jobs are open really. So
yeah,
it was kind of a sad state there, but all right. Well, that's great, Toby. We can kind of move on to the rest of the topics here. I'm going to kind of talk about some vendor funding news, a couple of stories out there we can kind of chat about. I'm also curious, hey, what do you guys think about HR Tech? Is it going to happen this year? If so, where are you going to go at this point? Any thoughts on going to events?
I don't see any significant turnout. I just don't, not in person.
Yeah, they're talking about, they sound like they're probably going to go virtual with it. But even if they did have it, who's going to want to go at this point, I think.
Yeah, I would agree.
There are vaccines out there.
I think it's pretty much events for the rest of the year are pretty much over at this point.
I think so too. I think there's too much risk involved. I don't see any organization, basically producing an event, as well as those organizations that attend the event want to take the risk.
Yep, totally. All right, let's move on to companies getting funded in the news. So I've got a whole list here. You can find a lot of these on hrtechfeed.com. Let's see, just today, Veti, which is a employee verification platform for gig economy marketplaces, raised $4 million. As I go through these, stop me if you've heard about any of this stuff, if you know about these companies. I'm curious how much you guys know about them. Bonusly got $9 million for employee recognition. They're out of Boulder, Colorado. A few other kind of these stories from May, which I saw. Chief, which is a private network for women, kind of women executives, got $15 million, and they're going to have some kind of job component built into that site. I don't think it's built out yet, but that's something to look out for. You're seeing these nichifications of different verticals here, and you're seeing job sites kind of what I call job boards 2.0, or just next generation social networks around a certain vertical job come about overall.
I'm not sure if you saw Andreessen Horowitz, the VC firm, put out.
Yes.
Did you see their report saying
Yes.
the future for recruitment and the great rehiring is in, and they've created a fund specifically for niche communities.
Yeah, they invested in Shift and a few other. They have like 6 or 7 "quote unquote" job, marketplaces that they've invested in. I read that piece. It was definitely,
Indeed is not the answer. LinkedIn is not the answer.
They really, they hammered them for that.
They hammered them. Yeah.
I thought that was interesting. I do think maybe now, because of COVID, and the rise of these other niches, maybe Indeed has reached its peak here. What do you guys think in terms of just its overall reach, its effectiveness, its brand, its mind share out there? Has it jumped the shark here? What do you think?
Couldn't happen to a better company.
Is anybody from Indeed in the call? I think
I don't
that's
think
my
so.
question before I answer that.
If you are, get out.
They have to. I mean, they have to do. There's two things they have to do. I mean, the first is they have to convert their business to some kind of a SaaS model, I think, and they're working really, really hard to do that. I know they're working really hard to do that. They're looking at buying things, and they have obviously bought SaaS businesses. And then the second thing is that they've created so much animosity with, you know, staffing companies and so many other recruitment tech businesses in the market that they've got to, you know, they're not starting at the start of the race. They're starting way behind a lot of other companies that have got opportunity.
It's true. They're not known for being good collaborators, and maybe they'll partner up with the folks that run HR Tech because they're about the same boat.
I think that, definitely, and Toby, you've got probably insight into this that you may or may not want to share, but I mean, definitely the animosity that you mentioned, Adam, is just the playbook we've seen before with Monster and Career Builder. Very similar. You'd think that, let's say, a brand like Indeed would learn from that. When I look at Indeed, I look, and this is, where you're questioning what are their next steps, what will they be doing? I look at Recruit, and the parent company, and really Indeed just being one facet of what they're building as far as the data they're building for not only, Indeed, but all their other products, some which, globally go beyond recruitment as far as the data they're collecting from, cradle to grave. Some, of course, for staffing firms that they've owned, since day one of coming to the United States and, basically buying Indeed. So, of course, now you've got Indeed, Glassdoor, Simply Hired, basically all these other brands, Workopolis in Canada. But really what it gets down to is the data. And what is their final goal for that data? And at that point, when do they, Ward, as you said, when do they continue collaborating? And when do they say, we don't need to collaborate any longer? This is really supporting, basically issues and products and business lines that really go beyond job boards.
Yeah, it's been one of the more interesting aspects of our business in over 20 years. When we started out back in literally 99, 2000, we were competing against the daily newspapers and literally daily classifieds, our old Job Dig brand. We were putting out free weekly jobs newspaper on the street for for quite some time, and you saw this pattern has played over itself, whether it's the daily newspaper monopolist and Monster and Career Builder, now Indeed. Just this cycle continues, and as big as it's hard to remember how entrenched those monopolists were, particularly in secondary and tertiary markets where we started out in the Des Moines of the world, where the Des Moines newspaper and those daily, they just were just horrible for job seekers and employers alike. And that pattern just keeps continuing again, and Indeed fills that perfectly again with the arrogance and the lack of customer service. And so we do see it with both employers that we work with and the agencies, the programmatic players, the partners. It's just, they have just gotten to the point where, we earn a lot of business by just doing things very differently from the way Indeed does it.
One interesting thing about Indeed is that well, not so much specifically Indeed, but have they not shut their the Glassdoor sales team, and they've moved that into Indeed? I think I heard that last week or the week before.
That wouldn't be surprising.
They've had layoffs at Glassdoor. They're, publicly they have not stated that much of what their intention of doing as far as, utilizing the Indeed staff for Glassdoor product. But I would foresee that Glassdoor salespeople would be, basically handling the branding components, the employee recognition, reputation components, and then all of the, basically direct response advertising, basically candidate applications, job postings that would go through the Indeed salespeople. That's what I anticipate. I could be wrong.
Does anybody see Recruit collapsing Glassdoor and moving reviews over to Indeed so job seekers are on one spot where the reviews and jobs are? That's what I'm thinking the next move is. Talking to a few people, like job views and applies from Glassdoor directly have been steadily going down.
I think the one problem with that is there already are a lot more reviews on Indeed
Glassdoor,
than there are on
Indeed.
Glassdoor.
Yeah.
But the problem is that Indeed doesn't necessarily have any kind of reputation of trust, whereas with the candidate population, perhaps, if not the recruitment tech or recruitment population, Glassdoor possibly does have some kind of kudos.
Yeah, the Glassdoor brand is definitely more valuable from the employee reviews perspective. So I don't see them shutting that down, in my opinion, because of that.
And also, Glassdoor's recommendations are approved by the CEO as per what they say. So it seems a lot more genuine when you look at it as a candidate out there.
Yep. I always, when it first happened, I thought maybe Glassdoor is going to power Indeed's reviews, and Indeed's going to power their jobs.
That would make sense.
Yeah.
Why would they do that though?
Right.
Well, as we all know, job seekers are transient, right? So they may not know the difference really enough to care.
They haven't shut down Simply Hired yet, and they bought that 5 years ago, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And that's all powered by Indeed jobs now. That site still gets SEO traffic too, which is crazy.
Wow.
A lot of SEO traffic. I think, is that, at some point, they may transition Glassdoor into the Indeed forum and brand it as Glassdoor. So as you said, the reputation that Glassdoor has, but move it into that cycle on Indeed.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. They may just, every job we redirect to Indeed at some point probably, so they can focus on that.
Although the Glassdoor sales team clearly learned a lot from the Indeed playbook after they were acquired in terms of the way they went about selling employer branding.
Jacking up prices.
Well, strong-arming companies.
Yeah. Hijacking corporate brands and everything else.
Why did they?
I'm sorry, Marvin, go ahead.
I'm curious why they discontinued Seen by Indeed. I have a couple of colleagues that just love that, and I was just surprised that they closed it down. Yeah.
It was an amazing product.
Yeah.
You use it, Derek?
Yeah.
I mean,
we used it. We have it until July.
So who did you hire off of it? What did you hire with?
We've hired a couple programmers. We hired a QA manager and a director of data all through Scene. And it was people, our director of data had a birthday. It was open a year. And it was people on Scene that was getting served up to us that we didn't see through deep sourcing agencies or on LinkedIn. So Scene was high value.
It may well be. There's a definite disconnect between a product offering high value versus being a commercial opportunity for the people who've built it. So it may well be it was too successful, but not valuable enough for the parent company.
Kind of like
we only
Google
paid
Hire.
$1,000 a month for it, unlimited seats.
It was, we used it for cybersecurity, which is a hard to fill area. And, it was amazing. So
Interesting. All right, guys. So let's see what else is in the news. Paradox, of course, got $40 million for their recruitment chatbot. What do you guys think about the whole recruiting chatbot space? It seems as though it's faded a little bit as far as just the noise out there for it. Companies like Alio, I think it laid off people, even though they got millions of dollars in funding. Any thoughts around chatbots out there?
it's not as easy as it looks.
Yeah.
We're using a version of that, and we're tying it into our CRM, and we're doing it in stages. But it's as you can imagine, with a lockdown company like Lockheed, it's challenging at best. So, and anytime you have a kind of an early technology and you bring it into the enterprise, it takes some time. So
yeah,
it's not painless. Let's put it that way.
Right. Yep. And you got somebody to kind of manage that thing, right? It's kind of a resource issue too for some companies.
Mm-hmm.
May I ask, if Marvin, are you tracking drop-offs? Like the difference between drop-offs prior to when you had the chatbot and then after implementation? Have you seen a decrease?
We are not. We haven't done the chatbot yet. We're working on that. So I'll let you know after that happens. But you know, I think, you know, we feel like the you know, the chatbots are going to provide some value to certain segments of our audience. So you know, we're on one level our company is half millennial and the other half are boomers, and so with, you know, a lot of people retirement eligible, so we've got kind of a mix of audiences, and we think that, you know, certainly with the millennial audience, that this might be a way to at least get some engagement and find out some basic information from people. We are using some automatic scheduling and those kind of things, which is going well, and saving tremendous amount of time on that. So we're optimistic, and I think it's first quarter of next year that we're scheduled to have the chatbots, something like that.
I do notice that Paradox does not describe Olivia as a chatbot, and it's a conversational engagement platform. And I do feel like chatbot, the term chatbot, does slightly diminish the power of the opportunity of that conversational engagement. Of course, we're only getting it in the traditional chatbot format at this stage, but there's really no end to where that could develop into different channels and different content formats.
Yeah, I think you're right. We are moving to that conversational type of description of these technologies across the board overall. It makes sense too.
And I feel chatbot really works well in high volume recruitment kind of environment, rather than, you know, with a small scale or niche hiring. And it gives a kind of good candidate experience as well in high volume.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, for our industry, we've seen post-COVID, 40% of our hires have initially engaged the chatbot. And I'm just now getting ready to launch text to apply, where you text a code and chat with a bot. So curious to see how that increases.
Is that through Phenom, Derek?
Yeah, I'm testing it for Phenom. I think I'm the first person to test this.
Oh, nice.
The text to apply.
So what's the user experience like for the seeker?
With Phenom, we came up with a code. So it's Kinder Jobs. So you text that to a number, and then you get engaged with the bot. And so it asks you questions. So it's like, hi, my name is, I can't remember the name that we came up with it. We're still working on it, but I'm here to talk to you about KinderCare. I just got a few questions, and, you know, it's city, state, years of experience. And then are you a teacher, field leadership, or corporate? And then from there, it's just conversational. And then we don't have Phenom and Taleo integrated, just for the complexity of the assessment we use. So then it kicks over to Taleo Mobile Apply.
Gotcha. Okay.
But so far, TA leadership has tested it, and it's served up jobs in the area, kicked over to Mobile Apply. We've stumped it a few times. I've got to add in some additional answers to questions, but so far it's been pretty impressive.
Nice. Nice. All right, let's move on to the rest of the news here. So Tradeify, the visual assessment platform, picked up $12 million May 14th. We've got Paradox, of course, Hourly, which is a hiring
Chris,
platform.
what's visual assessment, did you say?
Yeah, let me read to you the how they describe it here. So I met some of these guys I recently, or somewhat recently, at a few events late last year and early this year. So founded in 2011, Baltimore-based Tradeify unlocks the potential of psychology and big data through a visual-based personality assessment that is quick, accurate, and accessible to businesses and entrepreneurial developers. Current customers include more than 200 organizations in a range of industries. Let's see here. Tradeify provides HR teams at companies like Joanne stores and Lowe's Food the information they need to personalize communications for candidates. Candidates also have the ability to share results socially, accruing goodwill back to the company. I'm not sure what that's about.
So, I mean, that all sounds really, really smart, but visual assessment is not a phrase they should be using to describe their business, because that sounds like we're going to evaluate what you look like.
Yeah, that's a good point,
as
actually.
a candidate.
It's all over the press release. So,
no, like, you're good looking, you're getting to the next stage. You're not, you're getting a rejection letter.
Right. So we at Shaker, are familiar with Tradeify, one of the assessment tools of Pymetrics and the others. Tradeify's case is what they're using is visuals, they're pictures, with usually 1 or 2 words on the top of the picture. The person is supposed to look at it within a 2, 3, 4 second period of time, of which then they say that picture and those phrases depict me or do not depict me. And they go through an assortment of these pictures within like a 2-minute period, of which from their answers, their choices of the photos of, did it look like them or not look like them, as far as not their facial or visual, appearance, but, did it depict an activity or a demeanor or an attitude that is, basically consistent with that person's personality and behavior. So it's that self-assessment of which then they utilize, various tools to come up with an assessment of the person. We see it, as definitely for, let's say, certain workers, it could be a very condescending assessment tool that, they'll walk away from and saying, this is, absurd. Others might find it, depending upon their, basically, for lack of a better term, their socioeconomic and educational background, they may find it amusing. So let's say for certain clients who just want, for that candidate experience, they want to have some sort of interaction with the candidate so the candidate knows that something is going on in the process. This is one way to do it. They do get feedback from Tradeify as far as, what their strengths are and what their weaknesses are, more on their soft skills than their hard skills, primarily soft skills.
Mike, does it work better for certain industries than others, or certain, based on sort of what you're saying, occupation may be a better suited certain occupations, but how about just sort of generically by industry?
That I have not seen enough of to really to say. Definitely for the hourly worker, hospitality, retail, it both is, I think, shows some of the soft skills and the behavioral aspects that employer is going to look for in a candidate, which they themselves are going to say, I'm going to train that person. I just want to make sure they bring the right, basically values and behavior to my workforce. It could have, basically some, value there. In some cases, it's really how, in our consulting with our clients, is that, looking at it is how important is the assessment and how important is the candidate, interaction, that experience, so they don't, some tool there that they don't feel they're going into the black hole. And Tradeify, we feel, addresses, in some cases, more the candidate experience than it does the true assessment.
So that's kind of like Chris, what's it called? The talking robot that sits in the room, Tengai.
Tengai.
Because I firmly believe that Tengai is actually got a really good place in creating a distinctive candidate experience more than it does anything else, and I think that's got a really good place in recruitment. So as a fun part of the experience, more so than it's a really genuine psychometric kind of tool.
Yeah, I don't want people to get me wrong. I see Patty's comment about love Tradeify. Yes, for the I guess the right basically interaction with the candidate at the right time for the right results. It's very good. Just in that sense alone, and you say, at times we've had clients that's their the number one priority is, okay, how do I move the candidate through the funnel and make sure that they feel that they're getting interaction. Other cases, it's basically looking for ways to eliminate certain jobs and basically from their own recruiters. Either Tradeify or some of the other assessment tools can help on that process. Others, it's learning, basically where is, basically your question regarding, what industry or skill set was good for Toby. I think it's a learning process.
Well, I think it's your point on it. It has to be engaging and valuable, and sufficiently valuable to start, but engaging early on is more critical because it's that data and more people using it. And if you engage with it and you use it, all of a sudden, it's that power of the data starting to improve the technology and the algorithms and the relevancy for certain jobs. And the winners in that matching space are going to be ones that have enough in use, essentially just enough adoption and data input into it continuously that's going to give them the time to continuously be improving the relevancy and performance and effectiveness of those tools. So you've got to have that engagement early on or you're going to get just crushed.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. Like Mike was saying, having people complete it is better than having none of that data or feedback, even if maybe they're not 100% comfortable. But I mean, how many candidates step up and say, I want to answer a 30-minute assessment, to see if I'm a fit for this job? Nobody's going to volunteer for that. They only do it if they have to. So this, they claim, only takes a couple minutes. May not be the most robust validation or validated assessment, but one's got to believe it gives them a sense for maybe how they fit. And if they share that, I don't know if they share that with the candidates, but certainly the hiring managers, they got to, if they have high volume, they've got to they got to start somewhere, and this will help them narrow down that pool, right?
Yeah. Whether it's applying or assessing, it's got to be quick though for this generation.
Exactly. Yeah, that too.
Piggybacking on Malcolm Gladwell, the blink, if they can get it, they might even be able to get it down into that, 5 most critical questions in under a minute. You might have 85% relevancy of, something, and down the road, it is that day will come somewhere in our future. It'll be there.
Yeah. One more funny story I want to mention, and Adam, I'm curious if you know about these guys. You ever heard of MedWing, based in Germany?
No.
So they got 28 million pounds in Series B financing. So they're a healthcare staffing platform. And what I thought was interesting about them was that, and they're coming to the UK and France, I think, or they're already in those countries, but they've got this, they basically assign a career advisor to every job seeker that comes onto their platform. And I'm just curious how this can scale. And it's pretty, I've never heard of a job, a kind of job market like this, having a career advisor that actually calls you, it says. They call and talk to you. So, but yeah, they just got funding last week, medwing.com. Is there, you guys want to check it out?
So Chris, do they charge the candidates then for that service? Is that where they're?
I don't think so. Let me see here.
And what is the volume of hiring for that organization? Or is that the service they're providing?
It's nursing, elderly care, other medicine, it says.
I mean, there are a lot of staffing companies that are masquerading as tech businesses. So that company could easily have a model whereby this talent advisor is calling you up to find out if they can place you or not. And that's really the crux of this talent advisory conversation. And then they work out if they've got customers that will pay for you.
It's free for the seeker. It says our partners only pay us when you are hired. So it's a pay per hire model. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
That was interesting.
That makes more sense.
There's a company in North Jersey, I can't think of their name at the moment, that does that here in the States. And they outbound, it's mostly hourly, high volume stuff, but they do outbound calls. They had literally, I think at any given moment, 120 people on the phone calling candidates at no charge to the candidate, but trying to help them find a job, which most of the time is with some of their clients, right, that are trying to hire these folks. And they're instant connectors, and they charge anywhere from like $10 to $40 a job, or per hire actually. And I'll think of their name in a minute, but so it sounds similar. And then they have some upsells too, like, well, you're not a fit for this job, but maybe if you go back to school and get this certification from Kaplan, sponsored by Kaplan, so they get, if they hand off to a live rep, then they get like $80 from Kaplan because they know their conversion rate is such and such, and they get this kickback. It's it's pretty interesting model. It really can work.
Ward, I believe that company that you're talking about, I believe, is Upward.
Oh, Medway.
Now called Upward. They actually had another name
Upward.
before.
.net.
Yeah, were they called before? They're just like in Jersey, outside New York
Yeah,
somewhere.
right, exactly.
Can't
Hold
think
on,
of
let me look it up here if I can.
But
It
yeah,
used to be,
fascinating model.
used to be called Career Co.
That's it. That's the ones. Yep.
Now it's called Upward.
Okay. Yeah. And they literally made more money upselling to the educational, stuff than they did on any of the recruitment stuff. But their clients loved them because they only paid a success fee. And it was pretty low. I mean, some like you needed a trained welder. It might have been a couple $100, but still, that was for most companies hiring a welder, if they could fill the job in a couple days, they were all over that.
Nice. All right, guys. Well, I got 2 questions for you as we wrap things up here. As we pulling on an hour going on, but a couple stories that caught my eye. I want to get your takes on these. So Andrew Yang, the former presidential contender, says the U.S. is seriously consider going to a 4-day work week. It's better for your mental health. Some studies have shown that 4-day work weeks increase worker satisfaction by 40% in the case of Microsoft's Japan subsidiary. It's tried it out, but I mean, I don't think it's ever going to happen, but it would be nice to. But any thoughts on 4-day work weeks?
There's a company in Edinburgh, which is about 40 minutes away from where I live here in Scotland, and they are called Administrate. It's a sort of learning management platform. They've got about 50, 60 people based in Edinburgh, maybe a bit more than that, 80. And they went to a 4-day work week about 3 years ago. Productivity's gone up by about 20%. And staff engagement scores, like their net promoter scores, has gone up as well. And retention's gone up as well. And they've got a lot more people able to play the cello and speaking Italian and things like that as well. So, that's, I don't know very many examples, but that's the one that I know best. It's worked for them.
Our largest division, the aerospace division that makes the F-35, is on a 4-day work week now. And people seem to really like it. So we're optimistic that it'll go across the corporation. We'll see.
Marvin, is that 4 10s or is that 4 8s?
4 10s.
Oh, well, see, I think what, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, what they're talking about is a 4x8 or something similar, right? Not a 4x10.
Oh.
Sorry, I'm not following the language here. I've got
8 hours.
I think
8-hour days instead of
4x10 would be the ideal, though.
32 hours a week versus 40 hours a week. You see what I mean?
Maybe I may be thinking that's what they meant.
I'm not going to make it work less hours. That's for sure. For the same
Yeah. If I could find a good paying job, work 1 day a week, sign me up. Yeah.
I've always loved the nurses' schedules because my nurse, she works like 3 days on and 4 days off. She works like 3 12-hour shifts. So that's pretty attractive for a lot of people. And depending on the industry, it's doable overall. But all right, last question, and then we'll get out of here. So I want to talk about remote a bit. So there was a story about obviously a lot of companies are working from home now. Some are doing permanent work from home, but Mark Zuckerberg says that their employees can stay home, but there's one catch: if they move out of a high cost of living area, they're likely to see a pay cut. And so I think that we're going to see salaries across the board coming out of this COVID stuff with more people working at home permanently, because that shift has already happened, and you're going to see a significant amount of people taking these work at home jobs. The companies are going to pay less essentially. But what do you guys think about that theory?
I think it's entirely fair.
Well, I'd also add a second question, and this is we're partnering with Salary.com right now on our data and theirs, because Kent at Salary.com, one of his premises is not only would there be a cost of living adjustment, but they also he believes that just wages in general from remote workers today, there's sort of parity. If you work coming to the office or not, you get paid the same thing. he thinks that candidates are eventually going to be willing to, and employers are going to force candidates who work remotely to actually take just a general, even if they stay in the same city, that there's a convenience fee that the employee would end up absorbing. And I don't know whether I'd be curious on that question too, if people feel like that's.
Well, the Swiss court has just delivered a first case ruling the opposite, which is that if you're working from home, then the employer should pay a proportion of your rent. Now, I don't know if this is the same if you have a mortgage, but if you are renting, it's certainly, the Swiss have said that if you are telling not if they volunteer to work from home, if you're telling them they have to work from home, then you will have to pay a proportion of their rent.
Oh, that's
so it's the opposite of what you just said.
And it's forced versus voluntary. That's another interesting dynamic in that.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think it's going to, when you think about it, it'll allow companies to lower their footprint. Can you imagine what Facebook has to pay in the Bay Area or up here in Seattle to get office space? And, the trade-off, I'm shocked that they're saying they'll have to pay less. I don't believe it.
No.
At the end of the day, it's too competitive out there. If Microsoft is doing it and Amazon moves to that model, there's no way Facebook can do it.
Are you saying that because of the competition for who you work for remotely, it wouldn't matter, that would drive the costs for those employees back up to their typical range? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, what I'm saying is, at Lockheed, I'm remote and have been for the 8 years I've been here, and we're paid, whether it's here or the Bay Area or your area in DC Metro or wherever, there's an adjustment. There's a competitive salary that is more than we pay people, let's say percentage-wise in Alabama. So I'm saying that I don't think we're unique in that. And I think there's the demand for certain kinds of talent is going to force that, I think.
So Marvin, so you paid same job, somebody in Alabama gets paid differently than somebody in New York or San Francisco?
Yes.
Okay, so there is a cost. So to Chris's point, there is a cost of living adjustment that
they don't make it on a cost of living though. It's more of a cost of doing business. I thought for the first 5 years, I thought it was a difference because of cost of living, but it's not. It's something different that they've, massaged. I'm not sure what it is exactly. So,
if you're a software engineer earning $200,000 in San Francisco today, the concept of moving your $200,000 a year salary and moving yourself to Nicaragua would be pretty appealing.
We're thinking Guatemala, yeah.
Well, that's the interesting thing in this whole pandemic is, what's going to happen to big cities if people really start being able to work anywhere they want, a material part of the workforce. What's going to happen to the big cities, and is the skyscraper going to become totally obsolete? And what happens as people start realizing they can do the same work and companies get more comfortable with it? It's really a fascinating question.
Yeah, I think the suburbs, I think, get a huge influx of new populations at this point.
I spoke to the head of talent acquisition for the world's biggest media buying company in New York. Told me that 1/3 of their people living and working in Manhattan or working in Manhattan have put in notification that they're moving out of New York.
Huh.
Yeah.
Wow.
1/3.
Wow.
I think a lot of companies, that's why in the West North America, like San Fran or Seattle, are now moving to Vancouver as well, just because the salary, what you offer out there, there's a massive difference in what you pay in San Fran or Seattle and in Vancouver. So if a software developer gets around $200,000 in San Fran or Seattle, you can easily get somebody around 125 or 150 maximum in Vancouver as well. So it might be Grammarly or Amazon is going to want the data set around 20,000 people in next few years. So yeah, there's a bunch of companies moving here because of the cheap labor comparatively.
Wow, but it's not cheap to get a house there. I was at
no.
I was in Victoria not too long ago, well, back when we could travel, and I was shocked at the prices of condos there. I mean, they were just, wow.
I was speaking to somebody, I think it was last year, when all these, a bunch of Amazon and everybody was moving. And then the recruiter out there said, oh my God, we are scared because once Amazon gonna start paying so much money, we will lose our resource and we have the talent crunch here. So yeah, it's funny and weird.
One irony of this is that the benefit, the massive benefit for people all around the world and for companies could be, it should really democratize the opportunity to do great, high-paying work from anywhere in the world. But it's happening at a time when there's Mexican walls going up and there's Brexit happening, and we're retrenching from the whole concept of globalization, and nobody's going to be getting on planes for the next 3 years. And so, the timing's a bit off on all of this.
Yeah, totally.
It was one of the great quotes from one of the, I saw a guy that started a hedge fund, and he said, that was his premise, is that talent is evenly distributed geographically, but companies are not evenly distributed and that this does exactly as you said, that democratization of opportunity is massive.
Yep.
Well, some folks may have heard the story about IBM. I mean, for years they were trying to push people out of their expensive office space to work from home, and they saved all that money, right? Not having to pay the retail space. But then they decided to downsize, and the way they were doing it was telling everybody they had to move to wherever their business unit was moving. So if they were in Atlanta, Georgia, and their business unit was moving to Singapore, they had to move there or quit.
Chess.
And that I think that all went down last year, so it did not end pretty. But now they're probably wishing they had left everybody at home.
Yeah, a funny story about that. A couple of years ago, I wrote put on LinkedIn a blog post about some company I read about. They did a work at home study, and I kind of reposted that on my LinkedIn, and it went viral on me. And it was a ton of IBM people bitching about the fact that they couldn't work at home anymore, and that post got like 600,000 views on LinkedIn that week. Something like that. It's crazy. My LinkedIn Indeed IBM story.
Well, that
Glassdoor negative reviews also shot up.
Yeah.
Well, the concept work from home only work for those who are, for lack of a better term, more experienced. Because I know I have a daughter who said there's no interest whatsoever in work from home. She cannot wait to get back to New York. If they make her work from home, she's leaving the organization. So, but she's, only in her second year of her professional career. And I saw what happened during a consulting company I worked for. They all did a hoteling concept. We lost a lot of our junior people because they were no longer being mentored by the senior people that they joined the firm to work alongside. So you may gain the more experienced people who are asking for 200K, but are you losing all of your entry-level professionals? And then all of a sudden, in 10 years from now, you're out of luck. You have no senior people leading your team.
That's an interesting. In our company, the people who are struggling the hardest with work from home are the youngest employees in the company who just are. They cannot wait to get back into the office.
Right.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yep. Nice. Yeah, my daughter's working, learning from home. She's 17, and I can tell she's not liking it overall. So I do think it is a young person's thing. And to me, the ideal has always been 2 days in the office, 3 days at home, or vice versa. Having some mix of in-person is, I think, still so important out there. And that's the one thing I miss working from home myself, is that I have no colleagues to kind of chit-chat with, which is why I go out at night and go to networking events, things like that. But there is a balance there, I think, for remote.